You ever had anybody that just really fried your bacon? That you, oh, come on in. Don't want, we got some folks standing in the back. Sometimes there's folks that you just can't get along with, right? And, that's one thing. And then there's some folks that just will not get along with you and maybe even think thoughts of harming you in their mind. It ain't going to work. And how do you handle that? And I'm going to look tonight at how Jesus handled being in that situation, where we can see in his ministry, things started out pretty good, rolling along pretty strong. You could look over at some guys fishing and say, hey, come with me. And they just drop their nets and go with them. And he'd be preaching and healing people and doing miracles. And pretty soon crowds are following him and wanting to see what's up. Right? And then a little while later, he's doing some pretty incredible miracles, but he's doing them on Sunday, and there's some guys that don't like that. And they start making accusations about him, and they feel like he's a threat to them. And then, not too much later, they're plotting to kill him. They're not just thinking thoughts of harm. They're actually getting together, having meetings on how we're going to get rid of this guy. Right? Now, we're all in here and we're human. And maybe we've had somebody that was like that towards us. Or maybe we've had somebody like that we were that way towards them. And that's not the position we want to be in. And we're going to kind of talk about why tonight. But we can look at any gospel. You can pick up any gospel and look at the first part of the gospel. And there's some really neat things going. I mean, I'm just turning here to Mark chapter 5. And there's a demonic being healed. And the compassion Jesus showed on people is amazing. And people started looking at that and wanted to see it. And he's talking in parables. And he's telling these amazing stories. And there are amazing stories, but there's, like many stories, there's kind of always a bad guy, right? And some of these parables, the kingdom of heaven is like this, and somebody, a good and faithful servant, and somebody else is a lazy, wicked servant. And that servant's going to go where there's weeping and gnashing of teeth. Right? And when that person, when those maybe metaphors, those stories, those parables have characters that match real life characters, those real life characters who are good and faithful, they'd appreciate that story, right? But the wicked and lazy servants, they're going to start looking around saying, what's up with this guy? Why is he doing that? And so, for quite a while, Jesus was a popular guy, and people liked him. He's teaching in Nazareth in Mark chapter 6. I'm just going to flip around and look at the titles. He's telling about parables of laborers in the vineyard in Matthew 20. And he's talking about the death and resurrection being foretold. But then in 21, Matthew 21, there's a triumphal entry. Where's he entering to? Where's he going? Jerusalem? Okay. But then right after that, what does he do at the temple? In Matthew 21, verse 12, and Jesus entered the temple and drove out all those who were buying and selling the temple, and overturned the tables of the money changers and the seats of those who were selling doves. Ooh, he took a hard stance there, right? Later on, in Matthew 21, verse 23, his authority is challenged. So he's coming up against some resistance, right? In chapter 22, verse 23, he's answering the Sadducees. The religious leaders are starting to question him. And then by 23, he's exposing the Pharisees. These are the people, like we were talking about you may not like, you may not want to sit on the same pew in church sometimes, or if you see them in public, you just ignore them, right? And I mean, we all been there, right? Or maybe you're the one that gets ignored. You want to wave hi and say howdy, and if you're like me and you're just looking at somebody, you don't try to make a goofy looking face. You just have a goofy looking face, and you raise your eyebrows, and that person doesn't want you to wave at them and raise your eyebrows, and so a few months later they sue you. Holy smokes, that's no fun, right? And then you might start feeling like, oh, I hate that guy. I'm going to whip his tail. I ain't gonna look at him. I'm going to do mean things to him too, right? We got those situations. Jesus is in that situation. But what's the thing about Jesus? Was he stubborn? He took a hard stance in the temple and drove people out. Am I going to get struck by lightning for saying that?
But he's just doing God's will.
He's doing God's will. Jesus was doing God's will. He took a hard stance, right? In 23, he exposed the Pharisees. Before, he was telling parables that exposed their character, but he didn't just say, hey, woe to you guys, you whitewashed tombs, you brood of vipers. In 23, he lays it out, and he calls them out for what they are. And holy smokes, do they retaliate. Has anybody experienced retaliation of any kind? It's what's that? If you've had a sibling, okay, that's a very good example. Right. If you've had a sibling, you've been punched in the nose. And it wasn't always for nothing, right? Okay. So, did you make up with the sibling, though? No, sometimes? Yeah? Still love the sibling. Got distracted. Me getting distracted. When would that happen? But Jesus has got people that literally hate him, are plotting his murder. Now, he's being harsh with them. Does Jesus hate the Pharisees? Could we say that Jesus hated anyone that he come in contact with? Well, I need some supporting evidence.
He kept telling parables and calling them to repent.
He kept giving them opportunities. Okay.
And hated the behavior and just wanted that to change.
Okay.
So, for example, Nicodemus, he spent time with him enough that it kind of changed Nicodemus' heart a little bit, but he was a Pharisee. So he didn't just hate the Pharisees, he hated their behavior and called them to change.
Right. Nicodemus. Okay. Right. And we get to see his love played out here a little bit, but before that, in verse 20, it's chapter 26 of Matthew. I'm kind of going to stick with Matthew for a little bit and maybe bounce between the other Gospels, but just for time's sake. Matthew 26, my title, the first verse there, or above the first verse, the plot to kill Jesus. So there is a conspiracy to commit homicide, murder. When Jesus finished all these words, he said to his disciples, you know that after 2 days the Passover is coming, and the Son of Man is to be handed over for crucifixion. Then the chief priests and the elders of the people were gathered together in the court of the high priest, named Caiaphas, and they plotted together to seize Jesus by stealth and kill him. But they were saying, not during the festival. Otherwise, a riot might occur among the people. So they were aware that this was not the people's will. The people loved Jesus. He was healing the sick and the lame, and he brought people back from the dead, and it was witnessed by lots of people. And he was preaching a different gospel, one that the Pharisees didn't like. And then there's this guy, the chief of priests, Caiaphas. This is in Jerusalem, right? Chief of priests in Jerusalem was there when they're plotting to kill him? Okay, so how is the religious community in Jerusalem at this time? How do they work? Is it different from our community? A lot different from our community? I mean, don't they have their own little legal system, and they try to enforce? The Pharisees would try to enforce the law literally like a court on people. These guys would hold court basically. And we hear about Sharia law trying to be introduced here. We worry about that. A religious law being applied to people, but that's what was going on. Not Sharia, it's far different, but it was Hebrew tradition and Jewish law, not necessarily that you find in the Bible, but more of that the traditional laws that the Pharisees made up, making people live by that and hold in court if they didn't, right? And so Jesus is going to get called to court, and the people that were just there plotting to kill him are the ones that are hearing the court. Is that the term railroading? Does that apply here? Yeah. I keep getting told about the show Yellowstone, and there's a phrase in there, take them to the railroad station? Train station. Okay. And I guess that's where they get rid of people they don't like. What's that? They never come back? Okay. I almost know what that's like. But they were trying to railroad Jesus, take him to the train station. And they were going to set him up in court to do it. And that's part of their plot. And so by chapter 26, in verse 14, Judas is bargaining with the Pharisees to hand him over. They have the Passover. They have the Lord's Supper instituted, Garden of Gethsemane, and that's where he's betrayed, right? Look in chapter 26, verse 57. So at the very beginning of chapter 26, Caiaphas is there when they're plotting to kill him. Imagine going to court where a judge has been there when they were plotting your case against you, and then here you are in front of that judge. So in verse 53, those who had seized Jesus led him away to Caiaphas, the high priest, where the scribes and the elders were gathered together. But Peter was following him at a distance as far as the courtyard of the high priest, and entered and sat down with officers to see the outcome. So they go to question him in verse 63, but Jesus kept silent. So it seemed like a smart thing to do when people are accusing you of things. But Jesus kept silent, and the high priest said to him, I adjure you by the living God that you tell us whether you are the Son of the God, or the Christ, the Son of God. Well, what is going through this guy's head at this time? Is he thinking fair trial, due process, civil rights kind of thing? No. Why would he question whether he was the Son of the Christ, the Son of God? Has he heard it? Has he heard? Does he have any reason to believe it? He had to have heard of people being risen from the dead and people being healed. How does he think that happens? And then he had to have read Scripture, Old Testament, and the hundreds, if not thousands, of prophecies foretelling of the Christ. And he wasn't smart enough to put two together like Nicodemus did? Do you think he cared? Do you think he put two and two together? That maybe he was. Did the thought ever cross his mind that this guy might be the Son of God, the Messiah?
I think perhaps his heart was so hard that he thought that he knew everything because he was the authority. And Jesus didn't come according to their preconceived notion. He didn't appear at the temple with authority and throw himself off to prove and demonstrate his power, which one of the things Satan tried to get him to do. And he came from Nazareth. And so all these things that were preconceived made him unwilling to listen to the truth and come to any reasonable conclusion, any other conclusion.
Yeah.
He already had his mind made up. And I think a lot of the world's like that today.
Yep. Not a fair trial, right? Don't take your civil rights for granted, people. Because Jesus is getting railroaded here. So what happens next? Here, I adjure you by the living God. He invoked the name of God here. I adjure you by the living God. Imagine saying that. Paint this picture. He is standing in front of the Messiah, or the Messiah is standing in front of him. And he's saying, I'm asking you by the living God. That's God standing in front of him. The gall of this guy. And Jesus doesn't hate him. That's some power right there. That ought to give you chills. This guy hates Jesus, is plotting his murder. Jesus knows it. And he doesn't hate him back. Jesus said to him, you have said it yourself. Jesus sees the irony here. Nevertheless, I tell you, hereafter you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the power and coming on the clouds of heaven. Then the high priest tore his robes and said, he has blasphemed. Oh, he got what he wanted, didn't he? He's trying to set him up, and Jesus went ahead and just, okay, I'll walk in your trap. He blasphemed. What further do we need to have of witnesses? Behold, you've now heard blasphemy. What do you think? They answered. He deserves death. Oh, well, that was already decided long ago, right? Okay. That's just the first instance of a trial or a kangaroo court that Jesus went to. He got another civil trial, sort of, before the Sanhedrin. That's mentioned in Luke 22, verses 66 through 71. That's the only place where that's mentioned. But then he got before Pilate in Matthew 27. And then he went before Herod. You can see that in Luke 23, 6 through 12. Then he went before Pilate again in Matthew 27, 15 through 30. And then that's where he was scourged and mocked, had a crown of thorns and a purple robe. Then he got to carry a cross in Matthew chapter 27, verse 31 through 34. And then the crucifixion begins there in verse 35. And what is amazing is you can read in Luke 23, 34. Let's turn there. We sing a song sometimes where he could have called 10,000 angels. He had that power. Luke 23, verse 34. If you got it, read it out loud for me.
And Jesus said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And they cast lots to divide his garments.
Okay. So he knew about this murder plot. He knew he was getting railroaded. He knew where they were going with his questions. Stayed silent until the last one, and he answered it. So he gave them blasphemy. He let them have that charge against him. And that's what they used to kill him. To get him before Pilate and Herod. And Herod, there was Pilate that went ahead and said, let them take free Barnabas and crucify Jesus. And they went right to work, beating him and mocking him and throwing a crown of thorns on him. And the first thing he says that we can tell that he really said after that is, forgive them, for they know not what they do. That's going to be That's going to be our lesson. Because when you have that feeling, when you know that guy's looking at you or that person is looking at you, that's been gossiping about you around town, spreading rumors and lies, saying all these things you didn't do, or spinning what you did do into something you didn't. Somebody that hates you. Does that person know Jesus? And will that person see Jesus in you and the things that you're about to do to them? And raise your hand if you struggle with that every day. I mean, every day it's kicking my tail. But that's what I'm working on. That's what I'm calling us to do as Christians, is to know that person hates me, but forgive them because they don't know what they're doing. They may not know Jesus. And how are they going to know Jesus if you don't show them? If I don't show them? There's been times where I showed them my redheaded nature instead of Jesus. And I had somebody point that out in a very kind way, and it, changed my thinking. But then sometimes I let my redheaded nature take control again, and I need reminded. Now we're going to look at Psalm 109 at a different time, but I think it also harkens forward to what's going to happen to Jesus. Psalm 109. Does anybody have a title on their Psalm 109? A plea for judgment of false accusers, right? So this person, I think it's David. Yep, it's a Psalm of David. David has had people accuse him falsely. We just read about Jesus being accused falsely, right? Now, I'm sure Jesus didn't appreciate it. And I don't doubt that Jesus was as human and was as real as you and I are here today. And he felt humiliation. He felt shame. He felt embarrassment. He felt piercing thorns. He felt blows to the face. Have you ever had a big hit to the face? Yeah. For me, you hear it in your ears. You hear the thud, right? I mean, you can hear the concussion in your own ears. At the same time, and this may sound dumb to y'all, you hear the concussion in your own ears of the blow to your own head, right? And you feel that. You feel it go through your head. For me, I get kind of numb after that, and I don't think too good. But Jesus felt that very same thing. The pain on top of the humiliation. That should be moving. In Psalm 109, David, we can read about David and Samuel, and he went through some stuff. He had some people pursuing him. Saul, the king, people in power, trying to kill him, right? And so David is saying, "O God of my praise, do not be silent." Have you ever told God to speak up? Are you brave enough to say, "God, get to talking"? Who in here is brave enough to tell God what to do? David must have known something we didn't, because he's telling God, "God of my praise, do not be silent." I need to hear from you, God. Maybe that's a different way of putting it. God, I need to hear from you, please. I need some help. But he says in verse 2, "For they have opened the wicked and deceitful mouth against me. They have spoken against me with a lying tongue. They have also surrounded me with words of hatred and fought against me without cause. In return for my love, they act as my accusers." Who can we think of that David loved? But they pursued him, accused him, tried to kill him. Who was David around that could have been like that? Saul? What did he do for Saul? He played the harp, the lyre for him. He was an armor bearer. He comforted Saul when Saul was losing his mind, kind of thing. Saul was tormented by an evil spirit, right? Sorry? Later was Absalom. Oh man, he loved Absalom, right? He didn't want him killed. David had opportunities to kill Saul. Multiple opportunities. And instead of killing him, he just cut the corner of his cloak and said, hey, Saul, I don't want to kill you. I could have. Right? So people David loved hated him. They said horrible things about him, tried to kill him. And David was very capable. It was said of him that Saul has killed his thousands, David his tens of thousands. David was capable. He lopped the head off of a giant after sticking a rock on his forehead pretty good. But this is someone that David doesn't want to harm in return. He wants God to do it. David's not willing to run ahead of God. He's willing to fight if he needs to, but he's not going to run ahead of God. So in verse 3, they have also surrounded me with words of hatred and fought against me without cause. In return for my love, they acted as my accusers. Verse 5, but I am in prayer. Thus they have repaid me evil for good and hatred for my love. Appoint a wicked man over him, and let an accuser stand at his right hand. When he is judged, let him come forth guilty, and let his prayer become sin. Let his days be few. This is a kind of a harsh prayer. Shorten his life. David is asking God to shorten someone's life. David, with his capable hands, is not the one that's going to shorten that person's life. Even though he could, he's not going to do it. One, we know, was his son, Absalom. Another, we know, was the king appointed by God, anointed by God, that David was unwilling to go against God and kill, even though the king, Saul, was going to kill David. That's some character. Was David perfect? No. But did he have some character? Kind of, sort of. Yeah. What do you call that? I mean, what's another word for that?
Integrity.
You got it, Brad. Say it. Faith. Okay. David had some faith. How do you know this? What? Show me. You killed a giant. You killed a giant.
That's a big part of it. Mm-hmm. But read some of the Psalms.
Read the last of this psalm. Don't jump ahead of me yet. But yeah, you're fixing to show me. I'm going to let you read it. Yes, this is what it is. But we're going to read to it, okay? Verse 18. But he clothed himself with... Wait, am I right in the right spot? No, I'm in the wrong spot. Appointed wicked man. Where was I? Oh, shorten his life, right? Where'd it go? Verse 8. Let his days be few. Let another take his office. Does this point to some kind of an official? Let his children be fatherless and his wife a widow. Would you wish this on your child? Would you pray this for your child? We narrowing it down to who this might be? I don't know. Let his children wander about and beg, and let them seek sustenance far from their ruined homes. Let the creditor seize all that he has, and let the strangers plunder the product of his labor. Let there be none to extend loving kindness to him. Is it sinful to pray like this? You wouldn't want to pray like that? Is this different from Jesus saying, forgive them, Lord, because they don't know what they're doing? Okay, so we have that Jesus, but we also got that Jesus is using a whip to clear the temple and flipping over tables. I'm a fan of table flipping Jesus, I got to tell you. It's one of my favorite stories. Don't look at me like that, Clay. But there's also this Jesus that is, forgive them, Lord. I mean, they're killing me. Literally, I'm hanging here, but forgive them because they don't know what they're doing. That is amazing. That is amazing forgiveness, amazing love, amazing grace, amazing mercy, amazing power. Please grasp. I'm not saying I can fully grasp that, but dwell on that for a little bit and try to grasp it. Okay? But here's David, a man after God's own heart, praying a prayer that God will give him some justice. And it's pretty harsh justice. Verse 12, let there be none to extend loving kindness to him, nor any be gracious to his fatherless children. Let his posterity be cut off, and a following generation, let their name be blotted out. Let the iniquity of his fathers be remembered before the Lord, and do not let the sin of his mother be blotted out. Let them be before the Lord continually, that he may cut off their memory from the earth, because he did not remember to show loving kindness, but persecuted the afflicted and needy man, and the despondent in heart, to put them to death. So this guy's not an innocent guy. Okay? David is praying this against a man who is guilty. Now, David is not going to carry out justice himself. He's asking God to carry it out. It may be bold to say this, but I think that's merciful. This is a harsh, harsh prayer. But it's probably better than what David could have done.
But he's leaving it in God's hands.
Ding, 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 ding.
That's number one right here.
Uh-huh.
Of all the things he wants to happen,
Mm-hmm.
he's asking God to let it happen.
Yep.
But he's not pursuing it.
He's not doing it himself. Okay. Okay. Where did I get to? Loving kindness.
At the same time, while he's asking God for this, assuming that he's talking, has in mind Saul,
Mm-hmm.
keep in mind that Saul's descendant is David's best friend Jonathan. And keep in mind that once David took over the throne, one of the first things he did is he said, go see if Saul has any descendants left and bring him in. And he brought Mephibosheth and said, you're going to live in my house and eat from my table from now on.
Yep.
So even though he was praying that God bring judgment and that God purge the evil that Saul was bringing,
Mm-hmm.
he himself showed mercy at every turn.
Yes, he did. He showed mercy in the cave, didn't kill Saul. He's not the one that did Saul in. That's amazing. That is amazing grace, isn't it? He did not give Saul what he deserved, and he showed him mercy, right? Okay. I was in 18, because he did not remember to show loving kindness. I was further than 18, wasn't I? But he persecuted the afflicted and needy man, and the despondent in heart, to put them to death. He also loved cursing, so it came to him, and he did not delight in blessing, so it was far from him. But he clothed himself with cursing as his garment, and it entered into his body like water, and like oil into his bones. Let it be to him as a garment with which he covers himself, for a belt with which he constantly girds himself. Let this be the reward of my accusers from the Lord, and of those who speak evil against my soul. He left it in God's hand, right? And this is the cool part. Well, we're getting to the cool part. But you, O God, the Lord, deal kindly with me for your name's sake, because your loving kindness is good. Deliver me, for I am afflicted and needy, and my heart is wounded within me. I'm passing like a shadow when it lengthens. I'm shaken off like the locust. Do you think that Jesus might have felt these things when he's standing in front of the religious leaders who should have recognized who he was, who should have known that he was the Messiah, the one that's going to save them, that's going to give his life to save them? Do you think that when Peter denied him 3 times, that he felt afflicted and needy, that his heart was wounded within him? that he felt like a passing shadow. Remember how shadows get longer and longer and then they're gone? That's what David felt like. Do you think Jesus felt like that? And the end of his life when he was saying, my God, why have you forsaken me? It's hard for me to get that out without choking up. I'm shaken off like the locust. My knees are weak from fasting, and my flesh has grown lean without fatness. I have also become a reproach to them. When they see me, they wag their head. There's another place in Psalms that says that. It's Psalm 22. 23 is the Lord's my shepherd. 22 is a place where when they see me, they hurl insults. It's a very, very graphic depiction of the crucifixion that David is writing in a poem that he didn't see the crucifixion. He's 700 years before the crucifixion, but he wrote the crucifixion. And I think he's doing a very similar thing here. This is prophetic, I think. I've become a reproach to them. When they see me, they wag their head. Help me, O Lord my God. Save me according to your loving kindness, and let them know that this is your hand. You, Lord, have done it. Let them curse, but you bless. When they arise, they shall be ashamed, but your servant shall be glad. Let my accusers be clothed with dishonor, and let them cover themselves with their own shame as with a robe. With my mouth I will give them thanks abundantly to the Lord, and in the midst of many I will praise him, for he stands at the right hand of the needy to save him from those who judge his soul. That is a very faithful last few verses, isn't it? This guy knows that God is capable, that God will deliver him, and he's praying like it, right? That was a tough prayer. That was 31 verses. 31 verses, not short verses of gut punch, right? But it's a faithful prayer. I mean, it starts out pretty bold and then ends up basically praising God. And so what I'm asking of myself and of you, do we have the guts to do that? Have we got the guts to not act like we're God and bring judgment on somebody when we feel like they deserve it? Do we have the guts as Christians, or the faith? I just said guts. Brad said it's faith. I like what you said better. Do we have the faith to say, forgive them, Lord, for they know not what they do? Please handle this, Lord. And if you're okay with it, go ahead and strike them down, shorten their life, make them barren, take their children, make them embarrassed, make them feel the embarrassment that they've made me feel. But please take this away from me, Lord. Right? I think it's okay to pray like that. I think it's okay because I can see David doing it right here. But I think it's the biggest picture in here, the big picture that we've talked about from Jesus and from David is grace and mercy. And having enough faith to show it. That's my class. Thanks for listening to my spiel, and thanks for participating. You did a good job.